not going to worry about it. We'll just start there. I'll go ahead and do the, I guess we'll go ahead and start with roll call because we do have a very busy agenda today, so I don't want to sit around too long. And I know many of you are on here, so let me just look at, I just want to make sure Carmen made it on here because I want her to see everybody.
Hi, Denise. I'm here. It's Carmen.
Okay.
My computer insists that it is sharing, but it is not. I'm gonna try one more time. I'm actually gonna leave real quick and come back in and see if that works.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. No, you don't want that. It's not. Sorry, guys. I don't know where I'm having technical difficulty. Okay, here we go. We'll go ahead and do the roll call. So let's start with Multnomah.
Always here.
Francis is here.
Tina's here.
Welcome. Welcome. Do we have anybody from Clackamas? Washington. Northwest.
Hi, Dorothy's here.
Welcome. Lynn Benton Lincoln.
Christy's here.
Welcome. Lane.
Hi, everyone. Bess is here.
Welcome. Yamhill.
Ben's here.
Welcome. Marion Polk. South Central.
Hi, Jillian's here.
Welcome. South Coast. Southern. I saw Renee's name on there. Southern. Up there you are. How about Central?
Here. This is Brenda.
Welcome. Frontier.
Donna's here.
Welcome.
Patty's
Patty, I know you're there too. Welcome, Patty. Eastern.
Kelly Poe is here.
Welcome. I don't believe Blue Mountain is here. Anybody from Blue Mountain? Okay. They're excused today. Four Rivers.
Hi, Krista's here.
Welcome. All right, let me just jump back real quick. South Coast.
Sarah here.
Welcome. Washington. And Clackamas. And Marion Polk. Okay, so we'll go through, do the...
Denise, Amy from Blue Mountain is here.
Oh, you are here, Amy. Okay, great.
I am. I was on mute.
All
Sorry.
right, perfect. Thanks for being here. Sorry, I don't have the... I can't see who's on the screen. Anne.
Hi, I'm here.
Welcome. Margie.
Hi, everyone. I'm here.
Joan.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Carmen.
I'm here. Hi.
Hi. We'll come back to you in a minute, too. Angela.
Hi, everybody.
Andy.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome. Gwen. Okay, maybe she's joining a little bit later. And how about, I see Sue Miller.
Hi.
Anybody that we missed that's on with us?
Hi, Denise. This is Lisa Harnish. Sorry for being a couple minutes late, but I am here.
Welcome. Anybody else?
Hi, Denise. This is Cass. I'm on the line and I hit record.
Welcome. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Welcome. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joan to introduce Carmen Ellis.
So there is a lot of background noise going on right now. If you could please mute yourself if you're not talking. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So it gives me great pleasure to let all of you know that we have become very fortunate and have been able to bring Carmen Ellis on board as an Early Learning Hub specialist here at the Early Learning Division. Those of you that are from Multnomah County know that Carmen has made tremendous contributions to the CCR&R there, among other work, and we're extremely excited to have her join our team and are already reaping the benefits of having her, and looking forward to her getting to know all of you. More detail on that to come, and background and what you're excited about related to coming to work at the Early Learning Division.
I think you're on mute, Carmen.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Trying to save you from the background noise. Yeah, thanks for that nice welcome, Joan. It's really nice to meet those of you that I haven't met yet, and it's nice to see familiar faces from around the state. Yeah, so I spent the last 6 years at the CCR&R in Multnomah as the training manager there, managing a lot of programs. And then I also was our point person for our P3 work, and then a lot of our equity focused work, including our preschool expulsion prevention committee that I was on with Francis, among others. So I'm really excited to bring that information and like that learning that I've done with so many of you with us, and then just keep building on that. I'm really excited to hear about all the initiatives that you have around the state. I have a lot to learn from you in terms of your community partnerships and collaborations, and really excited to just hear about how each area has created really regionally specific solutions to problems, and to join you in solving the problems and doing the big lifting that we have left. Before I was at CCR&R, I was in the classroom for 10 years, infant, toddler, up through kindergarten, did some early intervention work in kindergarten classrooms too. So yeah, thanks for having me. I'm at a week and a half right now, so I am both learning and helping on projects and just trying to get logged into all the things you have to log into on your first week. So I've taken the deep dive in, and I'm also a newbie. So thanks for all your support already that I've gotten from so many of you.
Great, thanks.
Hey, Joan, can we jump in from Multnomah and just heap some praises on Carmen?
Sure.
Carmen, I don't want to embarrass you, but I just want to let my colleagues know that over the years, Carmen has really proved herself to be a really effective listener, and she's definitely oriented towards solving problems, and she has been a real advocate with us in our racial equity work. And it's our loss that she went to the state, but it's really a big gain for the hub system. And we just really wish you well, Carmen, and I'm so glad we still get to work with you in this capacity, but you're going to be a tremendous addition to the team, so thanks. Thanks for letting me have the floor.
It's very sweet, Molly. Thank you. I'm really glad we get to keep working together too.
All right, Joan, well, you're up next on the budget update.
Okay. All right. So I want to just talk a little bit about where we are in being able to provide extremely specific information, both related to the application of the general fund cut, as well as the coordinated enrollment, additional SSA coordinated enrollment funds that will be coming. So We are not in a position today to be able to give specific information because we're still gathering data. Yesterday, we met with our budget person, Catherine Jones at ELD, who's working with ODE, Denise and I, to talk about the 1.3 and some cut that's coming for GF. What we're looking at is taking that cut essentially in the school readiness funding stream because we want to protect hub coordination dollars for your core staffing, and we want to protect the funding stream that's associated with stable and attached families to the highest degree feasible. So Denise is gathering financial data and Catherine is gathering financial data, and I believe they're meeting tomorrow. Feel free to unmute if I say anything erroneous, Denise. Meeting tomorrow, so we should have a pretty good picture at that point related to what that cut is going to look like. And then in terms of the SSA funds for coordinated enrollment, we have about $3.4 million in coordinated enrollment funds to distribute to hubs. This is in addition to the PDG dollars that are already coming to you. So what we are doing right now, since a decision was able to be made to fund Tier 2 applicants in Preschool Promise, we want to do a little bit more analysis related to the numbers of providers that brings into different hub regions and make sure that our proposed budget amounts for coordinated enrollment also reflect the Tier 2 funding. We're hoping to be able to have that analysis later this week. And then once we have approval for those amounts, we would be able to share them as estimated amounts with you. And I'm hoping that will be by early to mid next week. Again, some of these timelines are not completely within our control because we also have to get approval for things from people that aren't ourselves. So we're endeavoring to do it as quickly as possible, but we're also trying to make sure that we're being intentional. In terms of the procurement strategy that we're using, our intention is to actually amend the PDG contract, the grant agreement that's coming to you with the PDG dollars. And so we are, I know that we have been working with all of the hubs to try to get your federal information, tax IDs and other things so that we can get those grants continuing to move forward. And I'm hoping at some point in the next week, we'll be able to update you as to the status of those PDG agreements and the timeline on those. And then I think you know that amendment process of essentially we're going to adjust the scope of work and add in additional funds will add some additional time. But that is the plan. We're happy to take questions. We may not be able to answer all the questions today, but our goal will be to get this information to you. We know you need it for planning purposes, and obviously it's not an ideal situation. None of us ever likes to take funding cuts. I am grateful that we do have more SSA dollars to give you than we had originally anticipated when you got your one-pagers with estimates earlier this year from Anne and Denise, where you got an estimated amount. So nobody's going to get less than an estimated amount. And our intention is, of course, where possible, you will get more than that. So let's look at the questions and see where we can go. And Anne, I may also ask you to unmute so that you can answer some of these more specific questions. So I can see that we have a couple of questions from Begonia. If you want to, Anne, I don't know if you want to talk at all about the what we're considering related to allocation, the kind of how we've been building that out.
Yeah, thanks, Begonia. The question will be, or the formula will be similar to what was originally. So for each budget category, there's sort of a how we got to this number. In most of the cases, it's related to how many preschool promise slots Hub Region was awarded. So that's where we're doing some recalculations. And then there are areas that are considered for the language diversity of a region, and some, although potentially limited amount based on need to travel.
So we have a question about the timeline to spend the additional funds. So yes, 6/30/21, because that's, you know, the timeline for the CAT, you know, the corporate activities tax, like that's the year in which we have to spend those dollars. When will your contracts be amended? So I guess, what contract are you asking about, Kelly?
That's a me.
Okay,
That's
go
a me
ahead.
question. So that's in regard, I think, to the school readiness cut. So we'll have to amend those contracts as soon as we get to exactly what the cut's going to be, and we, you know, work that out. We'll share that information with you and start the procurement process right away. My recommendation now is clearly, like, you know, we're cutting basically, if we do school readiness, it's about 34% of that 3.9 million to get to 1.3. So it's going to be based on the funding formula. So I can talk to you individually about what that would amount to for your hub if you want to start preparing, because you'll need to take that cut in this biennium. So we can do that offline, and we'll have more information, like Joan said, for real, because everything's just, you know, not permanent at this point. So, but yeah, so that amendment, Kelly, you know, will probably take us half the biennium to get to. So we're working on it.
Anne, I don't know, can you address this question from Bess about the PDG grants?
Yes, all PDG funds have to be spent by the end of this year. So that period will be technically through the 30th based on our federal grant. Okay. And I see
Of December, and 30th of December?
Yes.
Or 30th of?
It's a contract year. PDG runs on the calendar year. Yep.
The calendar year.
Thank
Thank you.
Too quickly on Dorothy's question. So because we have only until the end of 2020 to spend PDG, we want to spend that first. The funds were calculated to, the SSA funds were calculated to begin January 1st, 2021, and go through 6/30. I'm gonna botch this. Yeah,
6/21.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Any other questions? So as I said, we're endeavoring to get you more specifics just as soon as we can, but we have these processes that we have to work through. But I'm hoping that by the middle of next week, we'll be able to be more specific with all the things that we've talked about, at least what our intent is at this point in time. And then obviously we have to work these through on the procurement side.
Lisa, did you have a question?
I do. Thank you. And Joan and team, thank you so much for all of this information. It's really helpful for planning. So it's greatly appreciated. I'm wondering if there is maybe on the general fund reduction of the 1.3 in the budget report out of the legislature, it speaks to healthy families and the networks being reduced for the last year of the biennium, and hubs receiving a permanent reduction. Can you speak a little bit about that language and what the thoughts are?
I cannot, because I don't know what the meaning behind that might be, but I'm happy to take that question back and get back to everybody. I can chat with David Mandel and Troy, who are our legislative liaison.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Begonia has one more question about yes, the statement of work for the PDG will be modified. We have to do that to add more money. We got to look at adding some kind of more deliverables to that. Procurement's pretty strong about that piece. So yes, so once we get the first PDG grant out ASAP, then we will go ahead and start the amendment process to add the additional SSA funds to that as quickly as possible, and no later than January 1st is what we're endeavoring for. So, and there will be an update in the statement of work that will take into full account the coordinated enrollment work for the next year. I missed anything, Ann? Okay, and I just want to make one more on the, okay, go ahead, Ann, because I have something different to say.
Okay. I was just gonna say, if you all remember way back to March when we initially sent you draft grant language, we will be adding back in some of those collaborative areas around other programs aside from Preschool Promise. So that's what we're anticipating the kind of big circle of coordinated enrollment to include.
Yep. And I actually think we set that out in like January because it was before the Learning Collaborative. So if you guys need, help refining those, we have that as well. And the ETA on the PDG timeline, Molly, is yesterday is what we're trying for, and tomorrow is what we hope for. So it's in that final place. We know that, and now it's just a matter of when does it get executed. So one last comment on the school readiness funds. Just again, keep your wheels turning. KPI did not get cut. KPI is a very similar funding formula. We know that a lot of transition activities are not happening because of COVID. So there's a place for you to be thinking about. And on our next hub call in September 1st, we're going to have our equity fund manager on with us who is interested in learning about kindergarten transition and what's happening. So more to come on some discussion about that. So it's a good time to be digging into what are we doing with both of those streams, and what kind of activities will we, not be pursuing over the next several months because of COVID, and how might we do some, moving of funds around. So I just want to put that in your mind too, that I'll be sending you some questions to think about for KPI for that discussion. And she'll also be giving us an update on what's happening with the equity fund and those grants. So that will be exciting. More stuff to come on our next call. So with that, we have like I said, a busy agenda. So Angela, I've already made you the presenter to go ahead and do some engagement process with the hubs. And I didn't really give them any kind of previews, so I'll just turn it over to you to do so. And I'll help manage the chat box.
Thanks, Denise. Appreciate it. I'll just start here. So what I'm here to talk with you about today, and I apologize I didn't get my slides to Denise in time, but we're chatting about publicly funded program modification in the midst of COVID-19. And I know some of you were on the OPEC call this week, so thank you. I will try not to repeat myself, but the big question is, what should public preschool look like during the pandemic? I'm sure most of you are aware that our emergency childcare guidelines came out last week on Friday. So this is kind of running alongside that same track, but a different topic, really looking at Preschool Promise, OPK, what do we want those to look like during this unprecedented time? It's a question that we've gotten from a lot of providers, prospective providers. What can they do differently? What needs to be the same? And that's the question that I'm kind of bringing forth to you all today. I think hubs are uniquely positioned. Was it Carmen that said regionally appropriate answers or solutions, something along those lines? I really like that phrase. You guys are able to speak to your area really well, and also well positioned to be an advocate for family voice. You are the touch point for families as they look for enrollment, look for programs for their child, and able to speak to what you're hearing from families as they seek out care. So I'll give you a little bit of background info, and then really I just want to open it up to you all and take the role of note taker. If you're anything like our team, you're going to have a lot more questions than answers, and that's okay. Questions will help us think through our planning, so appreciate that. And I think she's still on, but Andy Bales-Molnar is the project manager for this, so she might have some additional thoughts as we move through. So what might this look like? Emphasizing the word might here. Some basic concepts around changing early ed models in the midst of the pandemic are continuing to do a fully on-site, fully in-person, no change to programming, and just following emergency childcare guidelines is one option. Doing an adjusted in-person schedule, adjusted on-site, so that A/B day scheduling, and then also distance learning, or we're calling it home-based learning, early ed programming. So maintaining some level of connection with teachers over a virtual platform, or dropping off materials at a family's home for activities and experiences once a week, or some combination of those. Are different ideas that have been floated from various programs and that we're continuing to discuss. Our goal is for programs to have a clear set of guidance that uses input from families, from childcare providers, and from our stakeholders, like all of you, a guidance that's driven by equity and centers the populations that our systems have historically under-resourced and underserved. A set of guidance that is strength-based and recognizes parents as a child's first teacher, doesn't sacrifice program goals or child and family needs, and balances that, we have the science of COVID-19 and the science of child development, and sometimes it feels like those things are very much at odds with each other. So trying to find a balance between the science of both of those topics. Other states have not put forth a lot of guidance around what public preschool should or could look like. Of the 45 states, only 10 offer detailed guidance around what public pre-K can look like. There's been some information some guidance from Tennessee around screen time and what that can look like. From Nebraska around just really focusing on family engagement over mimicking a classroom model. So there are some ideas out there and some things to consider, but I'll just leave that to you, and I'll make sure to send these slides if you'd like to look over them after the meeting. So with that very brief introduction to kind of the problem that we're working through here at the ELD, would love to know what you're hearing from families in your own communities about childcare/early education needs, and what suggestions you have for a model or service option that centers family voice.
This
Andy?
is Kelly. I can speak up.
Please, Kelly.
So Malheur Baker in Wallowa counties. Malheur County was recently put back to phase 1, and our rates have not come down in the past week, so we anticipate not moving out of phase 1, at least not towards phase 2, maybe even towards stay at home. The problem is we have harvest coming, and I know this is the case throughout Oregon. Our field workers are essential workers, so even if we get put into a stay-home order, our field workers still have to go out and work. And once they go to the fields, they'll go into the sheds. And we really think that our numbers and our cases are going to continue to rise through the rest of this fall. And all of these parents need childcare desperately so they can go to work. So we have, you're right, we have COVID and childcare and early childhood development all at odds with each other. So I do have more questions than answers, and I don't know how to do it. And parents are just desperate for care. And if we don't provide something that's quality, they're going to find something else.
Thank you, Kelly.
This is Bess from Lane County. One of the issues that we're hearing from families, not only around preschool, but what they're going to do with their school-age children and trying to find a solution that can work for both, especially when the parent is working out of the home, and for the districts that are, most of which are starting off at least with some type of hybrid model of distance learning. And some are 100% distance, at least for the first trimester. So that's a big issue that we're trying to figure out across the county. And I think the other thing that I'm hearing a lot of is just the real aversion to additional screen time for their kids, especially the younger kiddos. They've been working their whole young childhood to keep their kids from the screens. And so for all of a sudden it to be something that's not only encouraged, but sort of a requirement is really problematic for many parents. And yeah, just echoing Kelly, we don't have quite the hotspot of cases that Eastern Oregon does, but certainly, you know, I think everybody is anticipating a rough fall and winter with the onset of flu season and all of that. And so sort of like, how do you do this in a way that's flexible, yeah, and responsive to the changing, you know, COVID landscape?
Thanks, Bess.
I think that this is Begoña with Washington County. I think that in our region, we hear like really polarized voices. So we hear some organizations that they are saying, yeah, we are thinking about doing online or the hybrid. And of course, if they give us some waivers, but from some CBOs and home-based providers, we hear that there's no way how you can be offering pre-K services online. And also they're really concerned about the impact on families. We know that also Head Start programs were surveying families about what they need, and obviously for the infant and toddlers, there's no such a thing as an online or hybrid, but you know the kids have to be in the facility. But there is a lot of concerns about how this could be impacting families and especially the working moms.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Hi, this is Dorothy. I just want to kind of echo what others are saying in terms of families needing solutions for multiple children. So this, you know, really it factors, even if there's an online or even if there's an in-person option for their preschool, if they have a school-age child, then it's not a real solution if they don't have a spot for both children, school-age and preschool. And that is something we're definitely hearing, at least in our communities. The school age options seem to be super limited. So that was one thing I wanted to share, and it seems like it's happening in other places as well. But there is what I'm noticing starting to pop up is a little bit of a tension between centers, registered family providers that may be doing public preschool and wanting to have an in-person option with our school districts who have a really hard time justifying a publicly funded preschool that is in person when every other grade is required at distance. And so I think that there is that tension that is coming up in the communities that not only parents are going to have to navigate, but then the relationships across providers we're navigating as well.
This is Lisa. I would echo that. We definitely have a little bit of sort of a tension between different types of providers and what they're able to provide. So that definitely shows up here. And then I would also just had a recent conversation with providers who are really nervous about how do they help support school-age children with their virtual learning that is happening. And so what supports should, you know, we as a community be helping to do and provide for providers who have school-age children. So there's that. And I would also, when we think about virtual for publicly funded preschool, so Preschool Promise or OPK, if there is a virtual option or even a hybrid, is there a specific curriculum that has been adapted that we should help promote and or do some training on what might that look like?
Mm-hmm. And I think Andy spoke to that a little bit in the chat. Am I right, Andy? Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, sure. I think overall what I would say is that, you know, as we look towards our program year for both OPK, for Head Start, and for Preschool Promise, the overall program expectations are still there, but we're really looking at the how are those delivered, and the how is going to look different. But one thing that is still true is that as long as a curriculum is meeting those requirements, that it's an acceptable model, but the ELD does not pick any specific curriculum model to recommend, require, or endorse. But we're happy to have conversations with programs around curriculum that they're looking at and comparing it to requirements and providing PA around the implementation, whether it's in some sort of hybrid fashion, whether it's in person with small groups, depending on what the program situation is.
So thank you, Andy. That's great. And I didn't have my chat turned on, so that would have been helpful.
No problem.
Curious, so is the division going to be then working with each one of the providers on the how adjustments? Is that going to be something that the division will be offering some of that technical assistance and I'll say oversight for?
Yes, to the extent that we can do for over 200 grantees. We may be also leaning into our CCR&Rs for our Preschool Promise friends, but really looking at how do we provide enough guidance so that we can know what they can give us the information, know what's happening, and then we can identify who could use an extra conversation, who could use some more resources, you know, where can we support our grantees and our programs. And some programs are you know, they know exactly what they're going to do, and it's bam, 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 and others are still looking to find the sweet spot, and they may change positions every 2 weeks, you know, as this continues on. But yes, we do intend to offer resources and supports to folks as they navigate this new teaching situation that we are all going to come out stronger from.
So, Andy, one of the questions that we had from providers, it is around the compliance piece, around waivers. So are you going to give them waivers if they cannot fulfill the 900 hours, or if they cannot be fully enrolled? Are we going to be seeing like that the waivers are coming back?
Sure, that's a great question. I think where we're at right now is that we're really wanting all programs to tell us what they are doing, and then we're looking to see what are the next steps we need to do. You know, part of that is also how do we have grants and requirements that say one thing, but knowing that some of that stuff's just impossible this year. And so then what steps do we need to take? Because this is a very different circumstance than we've ever had before. And so it may end up being waivers, and it may be one general COVID waiver. It may look different because we're trying to just be as supportive as possible while also as flexible as possible, while also make sure that we are as ethical and as in compliance with where we need to be through legislation as well. So I think that when this feedback is really great and these engagement sessions are really great, and like we said, the overall project is to develop a document that would provide some of these answers. So the questions are great because it helps us think about how to formulate some of that information.
Hi, this
is Evan. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Donna with Frontier Hub. And we're sort of in a unique position right now in that our COVID numbers are really low. And the governor has allowed our schools to open, the rural schools, because we're looking at schools that have anywhere from 3 to 15 children. So they will be doing that. Our local school district that is a little bit larger is doing 2 days with one group of half of the students and 2 days with the other half. And our Head Start program is opening fully. We can open with up to 20 children in a classroom with a lot of guidelines and restrictions to keep the cohorts together. We don't ever have 20, so that we won't reach those numbers. We also have offered an option for families who don't feel comfortable having their children in the center of doing the packets and some alternate ways of getting the lessons to the students. But right now we're going forward and families are so happy to know that their children are going to be in school. The issue that we have though is that staff, and I have a lot of them this year because we also are expanding Preschool Promise, is finding childcare for them, for their students that aren't in school. And then who is going to help their children with their schoolwork, because it was a challenge even when they weren't working full-time. Now that they are, what is going to happen? So they seem to be positive and we seem to be doing okay. So I think we'll be all right, but it's a new phase for us too, and really interesting times. It's going to be interesting to see if we stay open, because if our COVID numbers go up, then we have to close. But right now we are face to face with the children here and a lot of new things in place.
Donna, can I ask a quick follow-up? And I know, Evan, you had something to say too, but you mentioned that families have the option of choosing the take-home packets. Have you found that many families have opted for that, or have any families opted for that at this point?
One family has. And one of the caveats is for us is Federal Head Start has really taken away a lot of the standards that they hold us accountable for number-wise. We aren't being held accountable for attendance or a model. If a different model would work for us better, we can do that. We're not being held accountable for number of days. We're not being held accountable for a lot of the normal things that we do, but we do have to stay in touch with our specialists to make sure that they know exactly what we're doing so they can report it. But the federal Head Start people are trying to make it as open for us and possible for us so we can do the work that we need to do with the kids and feel comfortable reaching out and serving the kids in the best way possible. And then they're not going to even monitor us this coming year, which is really the first time in my 27 years of doing this that any of this has ever been possible from the feds.
Thank you, appreciate that. Evan, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You were gonna say
No, it's fine. I mean, talking virtually always has kind of hiccups to it. So I wanted to echo something Molly wrote in the comments section earlier about families being viewed as the teachers. And I think along with that, if providers are going to offer hybrid or online options, I think there needs to be a really robust aspect around engaging families in how to use virtual tools and computers and things like that, because I think some of the experience we've seen through other programs with distance learning is, the suite of options is thrown out there and parents aren't really initially engaged in how to use them and understand like the curriculum behind it or what the methodology that's trying to be used is. And so I think there has to be a really heavy dose of working with families to understand what their environment will be if it is online, and how to actually navigate and use it in a way, particularly as we're talking about families who may be monolingual. I mean, how many online suites can we say are translated particularly well? That's one thing. And then the other piece is, is there going to be an interplay between perhaps what we might see from enrollment preferences and what's happening in the community? And by that, I mean, let's say an example where we've got 100 slots and the majority of our providers have said, we're going to offer a hybrid model. But of those 100 slots, we have 80 people who are interested, but only interested in in-person care. So now we're going to turn around and tell the families who are most in need, well, sorry, you don't fit this opportunity because the provider has decided they're not going to do in person. So I wonder, would there be some interplay between the demand of the community and what providers are offering? And if that's even possible, but that is a scenario that I kind of worry about, where we're limiting what the most vulnerable people's choices really are.
Mm-hmm.
Evan, this is Carmen. I think that's a great point. I also think there's another limiting factor in terms of families who most need it getting offered what they need. Actually, I have a couple of families I've talked to in Multnomah County who are looking for childcare and ended up not going back to their regular childcare when it reopened because they were only open 8 hours a day. And they're two working parents and they needed more than 8 hours of care in the day. So I'm curious how if that's echoing and happening in other places around the state too, because I know that in Multnomah, it's the data is kind of skewed in terms of like, just because something is open doesn't mean that it's actually contributing to the capacity of childcare, because it isn't, if people aren't open hours that fit, then those providers aren't actually filling slots and caring for children. And then some of those providers reporting back like, oh, there isn't actually demand for childcare. Look at all the spaces that we have.
Yeah.
I just want to hop on that interesting tension, and it's something I think that the tension between if they're not in a preschool program, like a state-funded preschool program, then where are the kids? And the other thing that's been a local conversation, I'm so grateful for my local R&R director, because we've just been working in tandem on a lot of these things, because for a family, the need is the same whether the child ends up in high quality childcare or a preschool program that's funded by the state. The need is being met or not being met. And so the data that's coming out of accessing 211 or any of those is different than the anecdotal things that we're hearing from folks. And so we're finding ourselves in a position to do some more data collection from families directly to understand what their real needs are. So I think that leads me to my next comment, which is it certainly is about publicly funded preschools, but there's also interconnectedness to the access of childcare and what that looks like, and also how we are supporting or how we're working together with our community to expand supports, whether that be trying to figure out how to support our R&Rs with their recruitment of more childcare providers, or thinking about displaced workers who might be good family childcare providers. I just think there's a lot of interconnected systems issues here. And last but not least, I will speak about Kaleidoscope Play and Learn groups, because I think in many cases, there are some hubs who have been investing in this model of reaching out to families, and we've been thinking about, do we send home kits or do we do online stuff? So whatever comes out of these discussion and the guidance from the state, I think it's going to be really helpful for us to line up our other investments and our other programmatic efforts, kind of so that we're really trying to meet what families' needs really are. So I want to extend a sense of gratitude for the chance to talk about this, and also just say that whatever you are coming out with has implications for the broader context of families' needs around childcare, and also how we're figuring out how to implement programs that we're already funding, such as Play and Learn or parent education or any of the above. So thanks.
Thanks, Krista.
This is Dorothy. Just I put something in the chat, but also wanted to say one of the things that we did our migrant education program out of the ESD always has a summer migrant school program that a lot of preschool families participate in, and because of COVID, they couldn't have it this year. So we wound up partnering with them and our STEM hub to put together kind of kits, and I think they were monthly or twice a month. And these were like just literally the staff people coming together and like, let's put some things together for families. And then they recorded they being our hub staff and migrant ed staff and STEM staff, recorded videos to go along with the kits as well. So there was like a visual element without like kind of logging into like a bigger platform essentially. And it was really well received by families. And it was sort of like a distance model for migrant summer school, but you know, in a way that like something that could be put together quickly and supportive of families. And then the migrant ed staff was still connected with those families to support them over the summer. And there's something, I don't really know how to articulate it, but there's something in a model that's distance learning that that family, that parent support piece of it, that if we go distance, if there's a distance learning option, there's got to be a deeper parent support element to it. And I think Molly put it in the comments of like, now would be the time to invest specifically in our culturally based organizations who are already doing that work, to like, if we have to have a modified preschool promise model or publicly funded model, there's got to be some other supports that come in for families. That like, it's a lot. The balance, I hear families, I guess, with the tug, have their own conflict around needing to place their children in care so they can get work, like, because they have to go to work or they're trying to balance work, but also with the, like, is that a health and safety risk for my family? So I also want to acknowledge that as well.
Thank you. I'll check the chat, but feel free to jump in if anybody had any thoughts before I just wrap us up. And I have copied and pasted into a separate document all of your thoughts here, but I want to offer up my email address. If you're like me and you have your most brilliant thoughts at 2 o'clock in the morning when you can't sleep, I want you to have a place to send those. So please jot down my email address if you don't have it already. We do anticipate sending out a survey to our grantees, our childcare providers, our early educators around this topic. And we're also really trying to prioritize family voice. Ultimately, this is a service to, children and families, and want that to be central to this conversation. So I will be giving Denise a link to a family-focused survey around public programming. And to the extent that you're able, I would love if you could partner with us in sharing that out to families so that we can get their feedback as well. So appreciate everything that you've had to say, and I have done my best to frantically take notes as you've been talking and also copy and paste everything in the chat. But like I said, if there's something that you forgot to mention or if you want to expand on your thinking, will hang on your every word. Please feel free to send me an email address as soon as it's convenient to you. And thank you, Denise, for letting me take up some time on this call today. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Angela. Appreciate it as well. Okay, so we will move on to our next agenda item. And Gwen, are you with us? We're going to have a update from the program team.
I am here. I'm sorry that I was delayed from another meeting.
Okay, no worries.
Turn on my camera now. Hi.
Moved you around.
Yeah, I appreciate the flexibility, Denise. So, all right. Well, hello, and I was glad I was able to hear a lot of that conversation. So thank you, Angela, and thank you all for your contributions there. So I think that I will, how much time do I have, Denise? You said it's less than 20, right? Around 5?
Yeah, about 15, 20 minutes.
Okay,
yep.
Great.
And doesn't
well, then I think we'll
enrollment, which is good.
Okay. All right. Well, what I'll do is, since it's a program unit update, I thought what I would do is start with just some updates on all of our programs. I have some modified slides that were shared with the Early Learning Council. So Sue, these will look familiar to you, and for some others who might have been listening in on last week's council meeting, but I just wanted to make sure that all of you saw some of our successes with the expansion of OPK and Preschool Promise. But I'll start with letting you know some information about our relief nurseries, because although we don't talk about it as much, relief nurseries also had an expansion with SSA. And so I wanted to definitely let you all know that. We have some new sites in different communities and also expansion of services in existing communities. And our relief nurseries have been able to maintain all of their funding as well to support that expansion. So that was also a great, I'd say, success of our special session. There's also some other funding that, well, thank you, I will share that now. Some other funding that the state applied for through, whoops, sorry, let me see, I probably shouldn't have shared that so quickly because now I'm distracted. Let's see. I'm not sure how to get it to go to full screen. I'll leave it there for right now. And it's through it's the GEAR funds, and that's Governor's Emergency funds for response to COVID. And what we applied for was funds for respite care. And so relief nurseries are also eligible for those grants. And we've been working on getting some of those funds out the door. And also relief nurseries are able to use, we have some CCDF funds that we're also using for respite care as well. So those are some services that relief nurseries are doing. The CCDF funds that are being used for respite care, those are for relief nurseries to be able to continue to provide sort of modified or services to families that were already enrolled in their programming. But the funds from the feds, the GEAR funding, the new funds, those are specifically for children and families that are referred to respite care from DHS. So it's a partnership with child welfare. And so that will be starting soon. And then Baby Promise continues to enroll. And as we get to sort of our full capacity there in the different communities where the pilot is underway. So some of you, if you're also connected to the CCR&R as yourself, or in other ways, you're probably familiar with the expansion that's been happening there. And so now I'll jump though to the OPK and Preschool Promise. And for some reason it's not, I'm going to see if I'm able to do this now whenever not letting me, oh, there, that's better. Okay, I'm not able to see all of you now, but let's see, we'll go. All right, so I'm sure all of you are aware, because of the different impacts that our final legislatively approved budget has on early learning hubs, on our CCR&Rs, and also our programming. For most of our programming, we pretty much came out sort of fully funded. We did have, with some of our Preschool Promise startup funds, some slight reductions, but nothing that we're not able to kind of work around and still be able to implement as planned. So the first is for Preschool Promise, we're moved from just over 1,300 children being served to just over 3,900. This is a huge expansion. And our objective was, serving in all 16 early learning hub regions, and also trying to reach at least 10% of all eligible children at or below the 200% federal poverty line in all counties. So our expansion plan that many of you are familiar with, that was connected into the early learning sector plans, was really by county, not by hub region. I mean, it was kind of a roll up into a hub region, but it was really done at the county level. And so how this breaks out in numbers, this is the statewide reach by hub. So you can see that the gray are existing slots prior to the expansion, and the teal are the new slots. So it's really exciting to see these numbers in all early learning hub regions. And also third from the right, you'll notice 43 slots, and that is the tribal nations. And we have 3 tribes participating in Preschool Promise: the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, Cal Creek Band of the Umpqua, Tribe of Indians, and also the Klamath Tribes. So that's indicated there. I'm not able to see chat box while I'm doing this, so maybe someone else from the ELD can help if there's something that comes up there. And then in our objective of serving, what was that? In regard to the objective of serving at least 10% of eligible children, you can see that we were successful in many regions, in counties. And if you see, like in Willard County, this was, I think, Krista, you'll understand this is, there aren't a lot of children in Willard County. So when we say we're going to serve 18 children there, we really are reaching quite a lot. It almost created a universal pre-K there in Willard County. So you'll notice that some of our less populated counties have sort of a higher percentage, and that is mostly due to sort of the scalability. We were trying to make sure that, there was like at least a classroom offered in some of our more rural communities, so you start to see some of those anomalies like Willer, Baker, and Grant there. The one county that we did not have any applications come in was Sherman County. So at this point, we don't have services there.
Wait though, can I squeak in on that one, Gwen? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, of course, if you got more on that.
I do. North Central ESD was the applicant for that, and they actually provide services for Sherman and Wheeler County. Right. And so so just so you, North Central ESD, it's in Gillum County, but it kind of serves a broader area, as well as Umatilla Morrow County Head Start, which also receives spots, and I believe that they're also they're in Gillum. So that area is being represented. So that data might be just a tiny bit off, but it's okay.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Chris. I'm glad you brought that up, because this is the way it kind of came out in the numbers. And I wanted to look into that because I recognize that, some of the providers are pulling from large areas, and I was trying to think, like, do we wait until to see which families enroll to kind of show that distribution, or, but I think it might, I'm trying to think of how to represent that there is coverage, even though we're not sure how many children yet, right, from that county. Thank you for that.
I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Thanks. No, we'll take you up on that, I think. And then when we're looking at the distribution across provider types, as all of you know, one of the sort of the foundational pieces of Preschool Promise is the mixed delivery model. And so we were really pleased to see this distribution. And these percentages are actually by percentage of children, not by number of providers. So it's a little bit tipsy. Like I'll tell you something. So like 35% in school districts, that represents just over 1,300 slots out of the 3,900 will be served by school districts. But actually, school districts make up only 25% of the actual number of providers. So like there's 51 school districts that are involved, or I should say 51 sites. But the largest actual number of providers are a certified family with 65 certified families. But because they have lower number of children in their spaces, it doesn't show up here as, it only shows up here as 19% of, like the 19% of the number of children that we're serving and reaching. So I just wanted to let you know that this is a little bit, it's a little bit hard to know, like, what is our largest group of providers by grants? It's family child care, the certified family at 32%. And then we have school districts at 50, actually it's certified centers at 53, and then school districts 51, Head Start 18, and registered families 14. So it's a pretty good split there. That was really nice to see. And then with our Oregon pre-kindergarten expansion, as you know, one of the main parts of OPK extension was that now we are a prenatal to 5 program. And so we were able to increase our prenatal to age 3 slots statewide by over 1,100. We were able to provide enhancement funds for increased salaries and transportation. and also moving a large number of our part-day slots into our full-day duration model. So I'll kind of show you that broken down. So this is a slide that shows the expansion of our prenatal to 3 services. So we went from 64 state-funded slots to over 1,110. So that's a huge jump there, and we're really excited. Our OPK grantees did a great job of submitting applications to serve, this age group. And then for our prenatal to 3 OPK services, there are 4 different models. There's a year-round center-based model, and that makes up 49% of the 1,100, and that was sort of our priority service model, just because we recognize that that's really what a lot of families are needing, are the child care, the center-based services. And then the next largest group is the home visiting model. And then we have also a locally designed option at 8%. And locally designed options are typically like a combination of center-based and home visiting. And then also some of the locally designed options might be, some of you might be familiar with some of the models that are in connection with serving like a priority population, like the model that's done at the Coffee Creek Women's Correctional Facility. And I think Albina just last year started a sort of a similar locally designed option with the male correctional institution up in the Multnomah area. So the locally designed option provides the ability for Head Start to really sort of get in and serve a priority population in a specific manner. And then we have just 2% of the children will be served in family child care partnerships. And then for the preschool age services, we were able to convert or move from only 5% of our slots in program year 19, let's see, there was a typo there, 1920. There were only 343 state-funded slots in a full-day model, and we moved that up to over 2,700. So that's a huge expansion of services. I think that'll really help meet the family's needs and community. So that was really exciting to see as well. We were hoping for 30%, and we were able to get it to 35%. So. And then the last slide is in regard to the salaries for lead teachers and teacher assistants. And so of the OPK applicants, 14 of them submitted plans where all of their teachers and teacher assistants met the salary guidelines as per the ORO or educational level of their staff. And then there were 9 that for most of the steps in the salary structure met the guidelines, and then there were just 4 that had some, and then there was 1 grantee who wasn't able to meet the salary guidelines. And so for those that are at the some, none, and most, the ELD program staff will be providing some technical assistance and really sort of digging into some of the barriers for success on this quality indicator. So that's sort of our update. I will stop sharing my screen and see if there's questions. Now I'll be able to see in the chat box. How am I doing on time, Denise, too? Am I doing all right?
We're good. I think this
okay.
You're good. Looks like there's a couple starting at the one where Molly says, Gwen, do we have a baseline?
Okay, Gwen, do we have a baseline in this cohort of preschool promise riders to how many of the small businesses are owned by Black, Indigenous, or other people from communities of color? That will let us know if our system is opening doors as preschool promise goes. We don't at this point, Molly, but as we're collecting data from our providers with our quarterly reports and our cumulative, we'll be able to track that much better. One of the challenges that we had, for one, we were only able to track sort of with the preschool promise applications providers who submitted in Spanish, right? So we know that there were, how many applicants we received and were funded. So of the 265 applicants we received, 54 submitted in Spanish, but it really didn't, the SurveyMonkey Apply didn't really help us to dig in, and we weren't asking some of the right questions, I think, at the beginning to like dig in, and then also pulling the data for SurveyMonkey Apply has been a little bit of a challenge. So we'll have to get some of that baseline information as we move forward with our grants. So thank you. So that's definitely something we want to know more about. Okay, Kelly. What is the alternative plan? Yep. Was there another question on that? Or?
No, I was just going to read it to you, but you got it. Go ahead.
Okay. What is the alternative plan for fiscal agents? My admin assistant has worked closely with our Preschool Promise in the past. The questions we are receiving today. Great. This is around insurance. This is a big expense. Okay. Let's see. Home providers are worried they will not have the contract and funds in time. How can we work in alignment with ELD? Kelly Post, spoken like a person who's been involved with Preschool Promise and has a lot of experience in this area. That's a great question. So in regard to the fiscal agents, there's a couple of things here. In regard to the fiscal agents, we had very few applicants, and when we looked at the data around like where the fiscal agents, who the fiscal agents were, where they applied and where the need was based on providers, we had trouble lining things up. So the ELD sort of had to step back and say, we need to do a little more work on the fiscal agent and really thinking about how to, I think, market it better, figure out, what are the shared services we're asking, and really develop, I think, a much better RFA, quite honestly, Kelly, to really get in and think about, like, what are the shared services that are needed and where, and how do we connect providers to those supports. And so what we're able to do now is, since we weren't able to connect the fiscal agent applicants with the need, but we do know the need, right? We know which providers requested support, and so we'll be able to use that information and share that information with CCR&Rs, and then try to connect locally with some of like the small business development offices or other support to try to meet the needs of the providers. In regard to the insurance costs are incorporated in the operating budget. So we will need, so it's not external. It's not like in a startup grant. It's actually incorporated into their operating budget. And so there is, the way the grants and ops teams will be tracking that is it'll be on provider verification of that. And so it's a little bit of a slightly different system from, I think, what the hubs needed to do in regard to the verification. So we're trying to simplify it for both providers and the funders, ELD. And so, but I do think that as providers, this takes time. There needs to be some sort of we want them to be protected as business owners as quickly as possible. And also, we know that it takes a little bit of time for them to arrange those policies and get what they need to meet our requirements. So
let me clarify my question, Gwen.
Okay.
So the question is, will they have a contract in place so they can pay for their insurance? So we worked really hard. We worked really hard to get all of our home providers the insurance they need, and they have what they need. They have exactly what they need. They need to pay their premium. And and that premium is an annual cost, and so that's pretty expensive, and it's right up front. And so it's really hard for them to come up with that much money if they don't have a contract. So I think they want to know in their contract, so they can submit their reimbursement. And are they getting reimbursed quarterly or monthly? And do I need to know that? I'm so used to my home providers asking us these questions. Sorry, maybe I don't need to know that, but.
All right. So a couple things there. Thank you for clarifying. So it's for the returning Preschool Promise providers. And and that's such a great point with their annual premiums that are due. So the grants and ops team is working on issuing out the grant agreements in August. I know we're getting into that 2-week here. And so, and then providers will, hopefully they'll be able to execute those grant agreements quickly. It's going to be in DocuSign. So hopefully that'll expedite, it won't be as long as kind of a snail mail process of getting documents signed. And then the funds programs will be able to, for allowable, allocable, and reasonable expenses that are related to Preschool Promise, they will be able to seek reimbursement back to July 1st. Okay, so I know that doesn't necessarily help them up front, Kelly, with a payment that might be due, but for expenses that were incurred in support of the Preschool Promise program, they will be able to be reimbursed through, like I said, back to July 1st. And then the other piece Did that answer your questions around insurance? Oh, and then when, what was the second, Kelly, what the other question was, a time, did I answer the timeline question there too?
Yeah, I think the problem is when our home providers worked through the ESD, we were able to, reimburse them for their expenses this week instead of waiting for the state to reimburse us. So we softened that reimbursement process for them, and this is just going to be an abrupt start for them. And we assured them as they, made their applications, many of them Spanish speaking, that they would have someone alongside them as described in the fiscal agent process. And so until that happens, until they actually have somebody to coach them along, I'm sure that they're still going to be calling Nancy, who is our Spanish speaking bookkeeper, that will help them navigate and find those answers. So I want to do things that are in alignment with the ELD, so we're not doing something that's actually causing more confusion. And so so I guess we needed to know what the fiscal agent process was and if we were stepping on toes or not. I'm not sure.
You won't be stepping on toes. You'll be a very supportive transitioning, from your role that you've had with those providers and helping them to transition. And then it'll take us some time, as you know, for CCRNRs to be, to have, some of them might already have the capacity and have those connections, but we need to also build, with the CCRNR, some of those, that capacity and also the relationships with other services in the community to support the providers. And then also our shared knowledge that we have at the ELD. So I think it's going to take all of us to support the providers in being successful in this. For some, it might be kind of abrupt and abrupt in different ways. Abrupt for the new ones, and maybe the transition for our current providers into the new system will be still abrupt as well. So, and I think that you had some around the quarterly, yes, and we're looking at the quarterly, but it's actually in advance, and so it's not necessarily like a reimbursement. So that's what we were really moving towards, and it was one of our goals, and that we knew we were challenged to do in our previous system. So just because of, so it was challenging, and so that was one way we were trying to be responsive with the ELD issuing the grants, was that we have the ability by issuing them ourselves within the ELD to do advance payments with proper documentation around their expenditures and really making sure, so it's we have to do that balance, but so they have to, then inform us how those funds are being used. And so it'll be, in the last quarter, it'll be a little bit of, that's where I think sometimes the really hard work is really getting the nail down and reconciling everything. But through the process, they'll be able to ask for advance and then submit their expenditure reports to us. So that'll be very helpful. So we're getting a lot of questions around like insurance limits. So the insurance limits for this year, they're in the RFA. And so any applicant who applied was able to see the insurance limits as, when they were applying. So, but Lisa, if you need a link to that or to see, it was in the addendum in the RFA for this process. Let's see. And I know, Denise, I might have to take some of these offline. I just want to be aware of time.
Yep, we got about 3 more minutes because I need 5 minutes for Sue Miller at the end.
Okay, got it. Okay, so it looks like thank you. Looks like the chat box, it looks like Kelly and Beth were helping each other out there. So thank you. Took care of some of that. But Begonia, let me see what you have here. If we move to hybrid and or online, what is going to happen with ERDC payments? Also, the mandatory reporter training, is it going to be adapted, modified to address the fact that in-person teaching interactions may be limited or not happening? What new tools are going to be available for providers for an early detection? I'm assuming regarding mandatory reporting. So these all sound like questions not specific to Preschool Promise, but in general to programming. So in regard to ERDC payments, I don't think I'm going to take that. What we can do is follow up on that, because I think there's been, with the temporary order and emergency childcare, there's new things. And so I don't think I'm the expert to speak to that. So I don't want to misspeak. And then in regard to the mandatory trainings, we can check in with the Office of Child Care and see what modifications have been for any of those trainings that might have been offered online, or if they've been modified to incorporate or be responsive to COVID and the circumstances in which educators or all of us are interacting with children and families. So I think, so I've got 2 questions, right? It's around ERDC, mandated reporter trainings. Okay.
Yep. And I can always send you the
We'll have
chat
to follow
box.
up on.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's no problem.
Yeah, and those can go to Amy.
All right.
Yeah, I can send those to Amy then. Well, thank you
Super.
all.
Thanks, Gwen.
Thank you, Denise.
Well, enjoy having you here now with us about once a month to give us an update. So that's going to be awesome. Thank you. And if anybody else has anything else, you can send that to Gwen through me or Carmen. We'll get that to her as well. So, Sue, I know you put something in the chat box about the Black Relief and Resiliency Cares Fund, but you want to go ahead and speak to that? We do have a couple minutes left here.
Yeah, and actually that's just for information. So for those of you who have Black people, businesses, or nonprofits in your hubs, you may want to be aware of that resource if you aren't already. It's a lot of money and it has to be spent by December 31. So good to know. The other thing I wanted to mention, I don't know how many of you have seen the audit that the Secretary of State's office did on DHS. It just came out a couple of weeks ago. And it's very interesting. Lots of data, lots of suggestions in it. And the piece that, one of the pieces that you will be interested in is that they talked about early learning hubs. And one of the areas where DHS needs to really focus on is trying to get more collaborative cross-agency participation in supporting their kids. And this is a child welfare focused audit, I should say. So I just encourage you to take a look at the audit. You'll see where the emphasis is on healthcare is certainly a huge piece of what they're talking about for cross-sector work, but they specifically call out the hubs as a piece of the network that can help get services to kids and families who need it. So just sort of a heads up, as I said, if I'm involved in a foster care project that is significantly impacted by the information in here, and I'm guessing your hubs certainly cross over with the child welfare system. So just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. And it looks like we've got 4 minutes left, and for you, because there's a bunch of questions.
I saw those. Thank you. I saw Beth and Dorothy's tried to combine your names together. We are hoping to have updated ETAs to you all this week. Our comms team, as you can imagine, has been inundated with requests around the childcare revisions. And so the forms and the outreach toolkit were in final review, and I'm just waiting to hear about their capacity to get it over the finish line. So I hope to send something out to you all this week.
Perfect. So we're fast and furious. 3 minutes left. Anybody have any last?
And do you have an ETA on the training for the lottery?
I think I'm also endeavoring to find our time and our materials for that this week as well. So I hope to be able to combine those two together for you all in terms of getting the timeline out.
And I know you guys are working on getting contracts out to providers and all of that. I'm just curious if you've determined the signal that you'll send to us when those are executed, so that we know like what the process is around that, so we know when we can sort of get in contact. I'm especially sort of thinking about our returning providers and our conversion families.
Yes, still in progress on that as well.
Okay, thanks.
We will let you know. And just so everyone's aware, the grants and ops team did send an email to all tier 1 and tier 2 awardees directing them to the FAQ list, because I know a lot of people are anxious about what's happening with, do they know about coordinated enrollment, they have to go through their hub, et cetera. So we are directing them towards that FAQ list. So if you would like to also be doing the same thing, that's a good place where they have questions. I know we're fielding a lot of questions that are coming from providers with you all as well. So, and as soon as those contracts are ready, you will all be the second to know as they go out the door. All right. So we got some follow-up that I'll send out to you today, information on the fund that Sue discussed, as well as the DHS audit, and then of course pieces coming down in these other areas. We've got some follow-up from the questions in the chat box from Gwen, information that will come back from Angela as well. So what a meaty meeting. Thank you so much, everybody. And we hope that you enjoy the rest of August, as next time we meet is September 1st already. Summer has just flown by, and we'll look forward to hopefully lots of things being in progress by that date. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
Thanks, Denny.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.